The deadly arrival. The quiet night on Earth was shattered as the sky flickered. It wasn't a storm or any kind of natural disaster. No, this was something far more dangerous. Above the Earth, in the dark, cold expanse of space, a fleet of massive ships appeared, blocking out the stars. The ships were unlike anything the people on Earth had ever seen. They were enormous, covered in dark, jagged metal, and their engines pulsed with an eerie light. They came from nowhere, appearing suddenly without warning. On board one of the ships, the alien commanders gathered in a dark room, their eyes glowing faintly as they watched the planet below. The leader of the fleet, a tall, thin being with sharp features and eyes that seemed to pierce through everything, stood at the front. His name was Zeroth, and he had led countless invasions across the galaxy. There was nothing he hadn't conquered. The beings that lived on the planets he had destroyed were nothing like what Earth had to offer. "Are you certain?" Zeroth's voice was cold and calculating. He glanced over at his second-in-command, a large alien with tentacles and multiple eyes who spoke in a low, rumbling voice. "Yes, Commander. The data is clear. The planet is populated by creatures that we can easily dominate. Their technology is primitive. It will fall before us," the second-in-command said with a smile, showing sharp teeth. Zeroth did not smile. He only stared at the planet below with an unreadable expression. "You've said this before, and I've seen your kind make mistakes. We will not underestimate them. Not this time." The alien fleet had arrived at Earth, and the command was clear: invade, conquer, and destroy. But even Zeroth was unsure of what they would find. There was something in the air. Something about this planet made him uneasy. He couldn't place it, but he felt it in his bones. He had seen it before in other worlds, this sense of unknown danger. Yet this was Earth, and it should have been easy. He pushed his doubts aside. As the fleet moved closer to Earth, the atmosphere grew tense. The soldiers aboard the ships prepared for the worst. Each one was eager for the victory they believed was sure to come. They had weapons capable of leveling cities, devastating the surface, and wiping out any resistance with ease. On Earth, the first signs of the alien fleet appeared on radar systems. The Earth's military scrambled to understand the situation, sending out fighter jets to get a closer look. But their planes were no match for the massive alien ships that easily outpaced them. The jets were no more than specks compared to the huge vessels that loomed overhead. As the alien fleet began to descend toward Earth, panic spread quickly. People on the ground stared up in horror, realizing that the nightmare they had feared was coming true. News reports broadcasted the terrifying images of the ships in the sky. The world was on the brink of something it could not fight. The invaders were here. In the command center of Earth's military, General Maria Donovan stood before a large screen, watching the alien ships as they prepared to land. Her mind raced, trying to come up with a plan. "Prepare the defenses," she ordered, her voice steady despite the fear that gripped her heart. The military's top generals worked quickly, activating shields and preparing every weapon they had. But they knew it was unlikely to be enough. These aliens were far beyond their technology. "What kind of forces are we facing?" General Donovan asked as she turned to her team of advisors. "They're heavily armored, equipped with advanced weapons, and their ships are beyond anything we've ever seen," one of her advisors replied, his face pale. "We won't be able to stop them with conventional methods." General Donovan clenched her fists. The world's best soldiers and weapons couldn't stand up to the might of these invaders. But one thing was certain: the Earth would not go down without a fight. She would lead them to the very end, no matter how impossible it seemed. Meanwhile, aboard the alien fleet, the command was given to begin the invasion. Zeroth watched through his ship's windows as the massive doors of the ship opened, revealing the hostile landscape below. The ground was unfamiliar, but it looked no different from other worlds he had conquered. He gave a small nod. The plan was simple: land, destroy, and enslave. The first wave of alien soldiers disembarked from the ships, stepping onto the soil of Earth with their advanced technology. They were armed with energy rifles that could melt steel and wear armor that could withstand most attacks. The soldiers moved quickly, advancing toward the nearest city. The people of Earth had no idea what was coming. Back on Earth, the world held its breath. The skies were filled with the shadow of the alien ships, their immense size blocking out the sun. The first wave of alien soldiers approached the city, and the air grew thick with tension. People began to run, seeking shelter, while others tried to fight back. But their weapons were useless against the alien armor. The aliens' technology was too advanced, their weapons too powerful. They were unstoppable. As the soldiers marched forward, Earth's defenders scrambled to fight back. But there was no hope. It was clear that Earth's military was outmatched. Zaraf's cold smile returned. "This planet will fall, just like the others," he muttered to himself. But what he didn't know was that Earth wasn't like any other planet. The Deathworlders who inhabited it had fought for survival against countless dangers, and they were not about to let invaders destroy their home without a fight. The invasion had only just begun, and the alien commanders were about to realize something they never expected. Earth would not be an easy conquest. The Deathworlders' fearlessness was about to take them by surprise. The first encounter. The first wave of alien soldiers moved swiftly across Earth's surface, their boots pounding on the ground as they marched into the heart of the city. The air was thick with the smell of fear, but the Earth's defenders, soldiers and civilians alike, fought to hold their ground. They knew the invaders had superior technology, but they were determined to make a stand. It was their home, after all. In the streets, chaos erupted. Gunfire rang out as the first clashes occurred between the Earth defenders and the alien soldiers. The humans' weapons were no match for the aliens' energy shields, but that didn't stop them from fighting with everything they had. Tanks fired their shells, but they exploded harmlessly against the alien armor. Helicopters swooped in, dropping missiles and bombs, but the aliens merely swatted them away with ease. Their technology was beyond anything Earth had ever seen. Yet, as the battle raged on, something unexpected began to happen. From the shadows of the ruined buildings, a group of Deathworlders emerged. They were humans, but unlike any others the aliens had seen. Their movements were swift, precise, and deadly. Armed with a mixture of military-grade weapons and improvised tools, they charged headlong into the battle, not with fear, but with a sense of purpose that shook the invaders. The Deathworlders were a breed of warriors forged in the harshest environments of the universe. Their homeworld was a brutal, unforgiving place where only the strong survived. To them, survival was an art form, an instinct as natural as breathing. And now, they were fighting for their lives, their planet, and their people. One of them, a tall figure named Captain Elena Vargas, led her team through the chaos. She was a fierce warrior, her dark eyes narrowed in focus as she surveyed the alien forces. Her team, a mix of military veterans and survival experts, moved with precision, taking out alien soldiers with ruthless efficiency. They had no advanced weapons, no energy shields, but they knew the terrain. They knew how to fight in environments where the odds were always stacked against them. "Focus on the weak points," Elena shouted to her team. "Take them out before they regroup." Her voice was calm but commanding, and the team followed her orders without question. They had trained for this moment, and now, in the heat of battle, their training paid off. They struck the alien soldiers with guerrilla tactics, using the city's ruins for cover. As the aliens advanced, they found themselves being ambushed from every direction, their advanced technology unable to track the fast-moving Deathworlders. The aliens were stunned. For the first time since their arrival, they began to question their superiority. The Deathworlders were not running. They were not screaming in fear. Instead, they were fighting back with ferocity and skill that the aliens had never seen before. Zaraf, the alien commander, watched from his command ship, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. "These creatures," he murmured, "they're not like the others. They fight with the strength of entire armies." He was right. The Deathworlders had a unique power that the alien invaders had never encountered. Their resilience was unmatched, their courage unshakable. It wasn't just that they were willing to fight. They were willing to die. The alien forces had been sent to conquer, to break the will of every species they encountered. But these humans, these Deathworlders, were different. They weren't afraid to face impossible odds, to stand firm against a foe that seemed undefeatable. Captain Vargas moved with a cold determination, her rifle aimed at the heart of an alien soldier's armor. She pulled the trigger, the blast of her weapon sending the soldier to the ground. Without a second thought, she darted forward, her team following close behind. "We'll hold them off as long as we can," she said to her team. "But we need to get to their command center. That's where we can do the most damage." Her plan was risky. The command center was deep within the heart of the alien fleet, guarded by hundreds, if not thousands of soldiers. But if they could take it out, they could cripple the invaders' entire operation. The Deathworlders knew this was their best chance, and they were willing to risk everything for it. But as they pushed forward, the aliens quickly adapted. The next wave of soldiers wasn't as easy to overcome. Their technology began to counter the Deathworlders' guerrilla tactics. Energy shields were deployed, and the streets lit up with beams of destructive energy. The Deathworlders fought harder, using every advantage they had, knowledge of their terrain, their speed, and their fearlessness. They were outnumbered, but they were not backing down. One by one, the alien soldiers fell, but it was clear that the battle was not in their favor for long. As the Deathworlders pushed deeper into the city, they encountered more resistance. The alien forces regrouped, and soon the Deathworlders were surrounded. The alien fleet, sensing the pressure, began to deploy reinforcements, bringing in even more powerful soldiers. Captain Vargas glanced at her team, their faces grim. They had taken down countless aliens, but it wasn't enough. The tide was beginning to turn against them. "We need backup now," Elena said, her voice steady despite the growing danger. "We're not done yet." The humans weren't giving up. Not yet. They would fight with every ounce of their strength. The city had become their battleground, and they weren't about to let the invaders take it without a fight. They had already shown the aliens a small taste of what Earth was capable of. But the real war was only just beginning. Underestimated warriors. The city burned with the fire of battle. Smoke rose into the sky, blending with the dark shadows of the alien ships hovering above. The alien forces pressed their attack, marching through the ruins with cold precision. Yet for every step they took, they paid a heavy price. The Deathworlders were relentless, and their fearless resistance began to take a toll on the invaders. Captain Elena Vargas crouched behind the rubble of a collapsed building, her sharp eyes scanning the battlefield. The street ahead was filled with alien soldiers, their glowing weapons cutting through the night, but they weren't advancing as smoothly as before. They were cautious now, their movements slower, more deliberate. They had learned that these humans were not the easy prey they had expected. "Vargas, what's the plan?" A young soldier, Corporal Harris, asked, his voice trembling slightly. He wiped the sweat off his brow, gripping his rifle tightly. Elena didn't respond immediately. She watched the aliens with a calculating gaze, her mind racing with possibilities. The invaders had the numbers, the technology, and the firepower. But the Deathworlders had something far more powerful, the will to survive. "We're going to make them regret stepping foot on Earth," she said, her voice calm but firm. "This is our home, and we're not giving it up without a fight." Her team nodded, their fear melting away under her steady leadership. They trusted her completely. She had led them through countless skirmishes, and she had a knack for turning impossible situations to their advantage. Elena's radio crackled to life, and the voice of General Donovan came through. "Vargas, status report. What's happening on the ground?" "We've slowed their advance, but they're adapting quickly," Elena replied. We need reinforcements if we're going to push them back. There's no reinforcements, Captain, Donovan said, her tone grim. It's just you and your team for now. The rest of our forces are tied up trying to defend the other cities. You'll have to hold the line. Elena clenched her jaw. She had hoped for better news, but she wasn't surprised. The alien invasion was too vast, spreading across the globe like a plague. Earth's forces were stretched thin, fighting battles on multiple fronts. Understood, General, she said. We'll do what we can. As the radio went silent, Elena turned back to her team. All right, listen up. The aliens are relying on their technology and brute force to overpower us. But they don't know this city like we do. We use the terrain to our advantage, strike fast, and keep them off balance. Hit them where it hurts. The team nodded, determination in their eyes. They split into small groups, each tasked with ambushing the alien soldiers from unexpected angles. The Deathworlders moved like ghosts through the ruins, using the shadows and debris to conceal their movements. The aliens, despite their advanced scanners and sensors, couldn't keep up. Their weapons were powerful but slow, designed for large-scale destruction rather than precision. The Deathworlders exploited this weakness mercilessly. Small explosives hidden in the rubble caught the aliens off guard, and sniper fire from high vantage points picked off their soldiers one by one. Zaroth, the alien commander, watched the battle unfold from the command center of his flagship. His piercing eyes narrowed as reports of casualties poured in. The humans, these so-called Deathworlders, were proving far more troublesome than he had anticipated. Commander, one of his officers said nervously, our forces are struggling to maintain control of the city. The humans are adapting. Zaroth's expression darkened. Adapting. He repeated, his voice low and dangerous. They are primitive creatures. They shouldn't be able to resist us. They're not like the others we've faced, the officer replied. Their tactics are unpredictable, and their resilience is unnerving. Zaroth didn't reply immediately. He stared at the holographic display of the battlefield, watching as his soldiers faltered under the relentless assault of the Deathworlders. For the first time in his long career, he felt a flicker of doubt. These humans were not the weak, easily conquered species he had expected. They were something else entirely. Back on the ground, Captain Vargas and her team continued their hit-and-run attacks, drawing the aliens deeper into the city's maze-like streets. Every ambush chipped away at the invaders' confidence, and their once unwavering advance began to slow. The Deathworlders fought with a ferocity that bordered on madness, their determination unshaken despite the overwhelming odds. But the battle was far from over. As the aliens regrouped, they deployed heavier weaponry, massive walkers armed with energy cannons that leveled entire buildings. The Deathworlders were forced to retreat further into the city, their options dwindling. Elena knew they couldn't keep this up forever. The aliens would eventually overwhelm them if they didn't find a way to turn the tide. Captain, Harris said, his voice urgent, we've got a problem. Elena turned to see what he was pointing at. In the distance, a towering alien walker loomed, its cannons glowing ominously as it advanced toward their position. We can't fight that, Harris said, fear creeping into his voice. Elena's mind raced. She refused to give up. Not now. Not ever. We don't need to fight it, she said, a glint of determination in her eyes. We just need to take it down. How? Harris asked. We improvise, Elena replied with a small, determined smile. We're Deathworlders. It's what we do best. As the massive walker approached, the Deathworlders prepared for one final desperate attack. The odds were against them, but they didn't care. They had faced worse odds before, and they weren't about to back down now. The aliens thought they understood the Deathworlders. They thought their superior technology would guarantee victory. But they were wrong. The Deathworlders were about to show them what true fearlessness looked like. Turning the tide, the towering alien walker advanced steadily through the ruins, its massive energy cannons glowing ominously. Each step sent tremors through the ground, shaking the remains of the once bustling city. Alien soldiers flanked the behemoth, their movements disciplined and precise. From their vantage points, Captain Elena Vargas and her team observed the scene with a mix of grim determination and steely focus. "This is it," Elena murmured, her eyes fixed on the mechanical giant. "If we don't stop that thing, it'll tear through the entire city." "Stop it," Corporal Harris whispered, disbelief in his voice. "How do we stop something that big?" "We make it bleed," Elena said simply, her tone calm but unyielding. "No machine is perfect. It's got weak points. We just have to find them." The Deathworlders moved swiftly, splitting into two groups. One team, led by Elena, maneuvered through the narrow streets to get closer to the walker. The other team set up a diversion, drawing the attention of the alien soldiers. Explosions echoed in the distance as makeshift bombs went off, creating a smoke screen that obscured the humans' movements. The walker paused, its cannon swiveling toward the source of the explosions. The alien soldiers followed their programming, fanning out to investigate. For a brief moment, the path to the walker's underbelly was clear. Elena motioned for her team to move. They crept through the rubble, their steps light and deliberate. Each movement was calculated, designed to avoid detection. The walker loomed larger with every step, its metallic hull glinting in the dim light. Its design was sleek and intimidating, a perfect representation of alien engineering. But no machine was invincible. "Look," Elena said, pointing to a cluster of glowing conduits along the walker's lower hull. "That's its power system. If we can take it out, the whole thing goes down." "How do we get close enough?" Harris asked, his voice low. Elena smirked. "We don't need to get close. We just need to give it something to focus on." As if on cue, the second team launched another series of explosions, this time closer to the walker. The behemoth turned, its cannons firing into the smoke. The distraction worked. Elena's team moved in, planting small, powerful charges on the walker's weak points. The alien soldiers, realizing something was amiss, turned back, but it was too late. The charges detonated with deafening roars, sending shockwaves through the air. Sparks and flames erupted from the walker's hull as its power conduits ruptured. The machine faltered, its massive legs buckling under its own weight. With a final, guttural groan, it collapsed, sending a cloud of dust and debris into the air. The Deathworlders cheered, their victory brief but hard-won. The alien forces hesitated, their confidence shaken by the destruction of their prized war machine. For the first time, they seemed unsure, their movements faltering. But the battle was far from over. From the alien flagship, Zaroth watched the walker's demise with a mixture of anger and disbelief. His claws dug into the armrests of his command chair as he barked orders to his subordinates. "Deploy the second wave," he growled. "These Deathworlders think they've won. Show them how wrong they are." Moments later, the skies darkened as a new wave of alien ships descended. These were smaller, faster, and more agile than the walkers, armed with precision weaponry designed for urban combat. The Deathworlders watched in grim silence as the ships spread out, their weapons glowing ominously. "We've got incoming," Harris shouted, his voice barely audible over the roar of the engines. Elena's heart sank, but she didn't let it show. "Fall back," she ordered. "We can't fight them out in the open." The team retreated into the labyrinth of the city, using the ruins to their advantage. The alien ships followed, firing energy blasts that tore through the buildings like paper. The Deathworlders responded with guerrilla tactics, setting traps and luring the ships into ambushes. Despite their limited resources, they managed to take down several of the alien craft. Still, the odds were growing worse by the minute. For every ship they destroyed, 2 more took its place. The Deathworlders were running out of options. Elena led her team into an abandoned subway station, the dimly lit tunnels offering a brief respite from the chaos above. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. Her team looked to her for guidance, their faces a mix of exhaustion and determination. "What now?" Harris asked, his voice weary. Alina stared at the map of the city they had salvaged earlier. Her mind raced, piecing together a plan. The aliens had superior firepower, but they were overconfident. They relied too heavily on their technology, underestimating the humans' ability to adapt. "We lure them into a trap," Alina said finally. "We draw them into the tunnels, where their ships can't follow. Then we take them out one by one." "It's risky," another soldier said. "What if they figure it out?" "They won't," Alina replied. "They think they've already won. That's their weakness. They don't understand what it means to fight for survival." The team nodded, their trust in Alina unwavering. They prepared the tunnels, rigging them with explosives and setting up choke points. The plan was dangerous, but it was their best chance. As the alien forces closed in, the Deathworlders steeled themselves for the next battle. They were tired, outnumbered, and outgunned, but they weren't afraid. They were Deathworlders, and they would fight until their last breath. Into the tunnels. The air in the abandoned subway station was damp and heavy. Faint echoes of distant explosions reverberated through the underground passageways. Captain Alina Vargas crouched by a rusted support beam, her flashlight cutting through the darkness as she studied the worn city map. Her team gathered around her, their breaths shallow but steady. "This is our battleground now," Alina said, her voice firm. "The tunnels are narrow, dark, and winding. Their ships and heavy weapons will be useless down here. But so will ours," Corporal Harris pointed out. "We've got limited ammo and no heavy artillery." "What's the plan, Captain?" Alina tapped the map, her finger tracing a series of choke points and dead ends. "We don't need heavy firepower. These tunnels are a maze. We use their confusion and their arrogance against them. We'll split into small groups, bait them into the tighter sections, and hit them where it hurts." The team nodded, their trust in her unwavering. The Deathworlders didn't need promises of victory. They needed a chance to fight. Above ground, the alien commander Zarath studied the holographic map of the city with a scowl. Reports from his scouts confirmed the humans had retreated into the underground tunnels. He sneered. "Cowards," he muttered, his claws flexing. "They hide in the dark like frightened vermin." An officer approached, bowing slightly. "Commander, the humans have proven resourceful. Perhaps we should proceed with caution." Zarath's golden eyes narrowed. "Caution? Against primitives? I think not. Deploy the ground units. Flush them out like the animals they are." Moments later, squads of alien soldiers descended into the tunnels, their glowing visors piercing the darkness. The aliens moved with precision, their footsteps echoing ominously in the cramped space. In the tunnels, Alina's team prepared for the ambush. The traps were simple but deadly, tripwires rigged with explosives, unstable sections of the ceiling primed to collapse, and carefully placed debris to funnel the aliens into kill zones. Every move had been calculated, every detail considered. Alina signaled her team to spread out. "Stay quiet, stay hidden. Make them come to us." Minutes passed like hours as the team lay in wait, their hearts pounding in the silence. Then they heard it. The steady march of alien boots, the mechanical hum of their gear. The invaders were close. The first group of aliens entered the trap without hesitation, their glowing weapons illuminating the tunnel. Suddenly, an explosion tore through the air, collapsing the ceiling and burying the front line under a mountain of rubble. Panic rippled through the alien ranks. Their tight formations broke as soldiers scrambled to regroup. That's when the Deathworlders struck. From the shadows, Alina's team emerged, their attacks swift and devastating. The confined space gave them the advantage, forcing the aliens into close-quarters combat where their advanced weapons were cumbersome. The Deathworlders used knives, blunt objects, and whatever scraps they could find, fighting with the ferocity of cornered wolves. Zarath slammed his fist onto the command console, his frustration boiling over as reports of losses flooded in. "What is happening down there?" he roared. "The humans are using the tunnels against us," an officer reported. "Our troops are being ambushed. The narrow passages limit our mobility, and they're striking from the shadows." Zaroth snarled. "Then flood the tunnels. Use the gas cannons and smoke them out." "But, Commander, the tunnels are unstable," the officer protested. "If we collapse them, we could lose our forces inside." Zaroth glared at the officer, his patience wearing thin. "Then lose them. Crush the humans at any cost. Do not make me repeat myself." In the tunnels, the Deathworlders regrouped after the initial ambush. The aliens had retreated, but Alina knew it wouldn't last. The invaders were regrouping, preparing for a heavier assault. "They'll come back stronger," Harris said, wiping blood from his forehead. "What do we do when they send reinforcements?" Alina didn't hesitate. "We keep moving. The deeper we go, the harder it will be for them to track us. We need to stay ahead of them, use the tunnel's complexity to our advantage." As the team pressed deeper into the underground maze, the air grew colder, the walls slick with condensation. The tunnels twisted and turned, some leading to dead ends, others opening into vast, cavernous spaces. Every step took them further from the surface and deeper into the unknown. But they weren't just running. Alina's mind worked furiously, piecing together a plan. The aliens relied on technology, but down here, the Deathworlders could level the playing field. "We'll lead them into the lower levels," Alina said, her voice breaking the silence. "There's an old power station down there. If we can overload it, we might be able to create an explosion big enough to seal this section of the tunnels, and take out as many of them as we can in the process," Harris said, understanding her plan. Alina nodded. "It's a long shot, but it's our best chance." As the alien forces pursued them deeper into the tunnels, the Deathworlders set their final trap. The power station was ancient, its machinery rusted and unreliable, but it still held enough energy to cause significant damage if overloaded. The team worked quickly, rigging the machinery with their remaining explosives. The aliens closed in, their glowing visors visible through the dark. "Almost there," Alina said, her hand steady despite the urgency. The first wave of aliens entered the power station, their weapons at the ready. The Deathworlders retreated to higher ground, their traps primed and ready. "Wait for it," Alina whispered, her hand hovering over the detonator. As the aliens surged forward, the Deathworlders sprang their trap. Explosions ripped through the power station, sending shockwaves through the tunnels. The ancient machinery groaned and shuddered before erupting in a blinding flash of light. The aliens were caught in the blast, their screams echoing through the collapsing tunnels. Dust and debris filled the air as the Deathworlders fled, narrowly escaping the destruction they had unleashed. The explosion rocked the surface, sending plumes of smoke and ash into the sky. Zaroth watched from his command center, his jaw tightening as he realized the humans had escaped once again. "Pull back," he ordered, his voice cold and controlled. "Let them run. This isn't over." Deep in the tunnels, Alina and her team emerged into a hidden cavern, battered but alive. For now, they had won another battle. But they knew the war was far from over. "We'll keep fighting," Alina said, her voice firm. "They think they can crush us, but they don't understand what it means to be Deathworlders." The team nodded, their resolve unbroken. The aliens had underestimated them once again, and they would continue to pay the price. The hidden enemy. The cavern was vast and eerily quiet, its natural walls glistening with moisture. Dim light filtered through cracks in the rock, casting long, shifting shadows that danced across the floor. Captain Alina Vargas and her team stood in the center, their eyes scanning every corner for signs of danger. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and lingering smoke from their recent escape. "Where are we?" Corporal Harris asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Deep," Alina replied, her tone grim. She crouched to examine the ground, tracing a series of faint, unnatural marks with her fingers. Too deep. These tunnels weren't made by humans or time. The team exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't just a safe zone to regroup. It felt ancient, purposeful, and distinctly alien. Far above, Zarath paced in the command center, his golden eyes fixed on a holographic map of the city and its subterranean layers. The latest explosion had carved a massive void into the underground network, and his scouts had lost track of the humans' movements. "They'd gone underground," Zarath growled. Cowardice and resourcefulness. A dangerous mix. An officer approached, his posture hesitant. "Commander, we've detected unusual energy readings in the lower tunnels. It's not from our systems." Zarath paused, his sharp gaze snapping to the officer. "Explain." "We're not certain of its origin, but it's old. Far older than this planet's surface structures. It could be remnants of something pre-existing." A slow, wicked smile spread across Zarath's face. "Then perhaps the humans have stumbled into their own doom. Send drones to investigate. If there's power down there, I want it harnessed. And if the humans interfere," his claws flexed, "they won't live long enough to regret it." Back in the cavern, Alina's team advanced cautiously. The faint markings on the ground grew more distinct, resembling a script none of them could recognize. Strange, glowing veins pulsed faintly along the walls, casting an otherworldly glow. "What is this place?" Harris asked, his voice filled with a mix of awe and dread. "Something old," Alina replied, her eyes narrowing, "and not abandoned. Look." She pointed to a faintly glowing structure at the far end of the cavern. It rose from the ground like a jagged spire, its surface smooth and dark, with lines of light coursing through it like blood in veins. The team approached cautiously, their weapons raised. As they drew closer, a low hum filled the air, resonating in their bones. The spire's light intensified, and a series of symbols illuminated on its surface, shifting and reconfiguring as if responding to their presence. "This doesn't feel like a safe hiding spot," Harris muttered. Alina nodded. "It's not, but it might be something we can use." Before she could elaborate, a sharp sound echoed through the cavern, the unmistakable whir of approaching alien drones. "They found us," one of the team members shouted. "Take cover." Alina barked. The drones swarmed into the cavern, their sleek, insect-like forms glowing with energy. They fired beams of concentrated light, slicing through the air and forcing the humans to scatter. Alina and her team returned fire, but their weapons were no match for the drone's speed and agility. "We can't take them all down," Harris shouted, ducking behind a rock as a beam scorched the wall above him. "We don't need to," Alina replied, her mind racing. She glanced at the spire, its glow intensifying with every passing moment. "We just need to wake it up." Alina sprinted toward the spire, dodging laser fire as the hum grew louder, almost deafening. She reached the base and placed her hand against the smooth surface. It was warm, almost alive. The symbols shifted again, forming a pattern that glowed brighter with each passing second. "Alina, what are you doing?" Harris shouted. "Trust me," she yelled back. The spire pulsed, sending a shockwave through the cavern that knocked everyone off their feet. The drones faltered, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. Then, without warning, the spire unleashed a blinding surge of energy that swept through the cavern like a tidal wave. When the light faded, the drones lay motionless, their sleek bodies sparking and lifeless. The cavern fell silent once more, the hum from the spire now but gentle, rhythmic pulse. Alina stood slowly, her hand still resting on the spire. She turned to her team, her face a mix of relief and curiosity. "I think we just found our equalizer." In the command center, Zarath slammed his fist against the console, his fury palpable. "What happened?" "The drones. They've been neutralized," the officer stammered. "Some kind of energy surge from the lower tunnels." Zarath's eyes narrowed. "The humans have uncovered something far more dangerous than we anticipated." double the forces. If they think they can control what lies below, they are gravely mistaken. Back in the cavern, Elena and her team examined the spire, its light now steady and calming. "What is this thing?" Harris asked, his voice tinged with awe. "I don't know," Elena admitted. "But whatever it is, it's on our side. And we're going to figure out how to use it." The team nodded, their spirits lifting for the first time in days. For the first time, they had something the aliens couldn't understand, something that might turn the tide in their favor. Elena looked back at the spire, her resolve hardening. They wanted a fight. Let's give them one. The rising fury. The spire's light pulsed steadily, like the heartbeat of a dormant giant waiting to wake. Captain Elena Vargas stood at its base, her hand brushing its surface. The smooth alien material was cool now, but its latent energy was unmistakable. "Whatever this thing is, it's powerful," she said, turning to her team. "And it's ours, for now." Corporal Harris crossed his arms, glancing nervously at the spire. "I don't like it, Captain. We don't know what it's capable of or what it might cost us." Elena's eyes hardened. "What's the alternative?" "Let the aliens wipe us out. This is a weapon, one they fear. We don't have to understand it completely to use it." The rest of the team exchanged wary glances, but nodded in agreement. They didn't have the luxury of doubt. Above ground, Zarath stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching a live feed of the cavern. His drone sensors had captured the activation of the spire and the devastation it caused to his forces. The sight filled him with a rare, uneasy anger. "The humans have awakened something ancient," he said, his voice low and deliberate. "Something that does not belong to them." "Shall we deploy reinforcements, Commander?" an officer asked cautiously. Zarath's claws tapped rhythmically on the console. "No, not yet. If the humans believe they have found salvation, let them bask in their false hope. Prepare the seismic charges. We'll bring the entire cavern down on their heads and bury their stolen treasure forever." Deep in the tunnels, Elena's team worked quickly. The spire, now partially active, had revealed more of its secrets. Small panels had opened along its base, revealing glowing symbols and mechanisms that none of them recognized. Yet with trial and error, they began piecing together its purpose. "This isn't just a weapon," Harris muttered, staring at the intricate symbols. "It's a system, a control center for something bigger." "What do you mean?" Elena asked, her brow furrowed. Harris gestured to a series of symbols that pulsed faintly. "These look like star charts. Coordinates, maybe. And these." He pointed to a second set of symbols. "They're connected to power systems. This thing could control more than just the energy here." Elena's mind raced. If Harris was right, the spire wasn't just a weapon. It was part of a network, a relic from an advanced civilization that once ruled this planet or beyond. "Can we use it to fight back?" she asked. Harris hesitated. "Maybe. But there's a risk. If we push the wrong buttons, we could destroy ourselves, or worse." Elena took a deep breath. "We don't have a choice. Whatever this thing is, it's the only chance we've got. We just have to move fast." The ground shook suddenly, a deep rumble that sent dust and debris raining from the cavern ceiling. "Earthquake?" one of the team members asked, panic creeping into their voice. "No," Elena said grimly. "That's them. They're trying to bury us alive." As if on cue, the comms crackled to life, and a voice filled the air, a deep, guttural tone laced with menace. "Humans," Zarath's voice boomed. "Your arrogance has led you to this moment. Surrender now, and I might spare what remains of your kind. Continue to defy us, and you will be annihilated, along with your precious artifact." Elena grabbed the comm device, her voice defiant. "Nice speech. Here's ours. Come and try." The rumbling intensified, and chunks of rock began falling from the ceiling. Zarath's seismic charges were destabilizing the entire cavern. "We have to move," Harris said, his voice urgent. "The spire won't survive a direct collapse." "We're not leaving it," Alina said firmly. It's our only leverage. Can you activate more of its systems? Harris nodded reluctantly. I think so, but I'll need time. Then we'll buy you some, Alina said. She turned to the rest of the team. Form a perimeter. If they're coming for us, we make them pay for every step. The team sprang into action, setting up makeshift defenses using rubble and scavenged materials. They knew the aliens were coming. It was only a matter of when. Minutes later, the first wave of alien soldiers arrived, their glowing visors cutting through the gloom. The Deathworlders opened fire, using the narrow tunnels to their advantage. The aliens advanced steadily, their superior numbers pressing the humans back inch by inch. Amid the chaos, Harris worked furiously at the spire, his hands flying over the glowing symbols. Each new activation sent ripples of energy through the cavern, momentarily stunning the attackers and giving the Deathworlders brief reprieves. I've almost got it, Harris shouted, his voice barely audible over the gunfire. Good, Alina replied, reloading her weapon. Because we're running out of ground. As the battle raged, the spire's hum grew louder, its light brighter. Then, with a sudden surge of energy, a new section of the spire unfolded, revealing a series of crystalline panels. What's happening? Alina asked, her voice filled with urgency. It's responding, Harris said, awe in his voice. I think it's activating something bigger. Before anyone could react, a massive beam of light shot from the spire's apex, piercing through the cavern ceiling and into the sky above. The ground trembled violently, and the alien soldiers hesitated, their movements faltering as the spire's energy pulsed through the air. On the surface, Zaroff stared at the beam of light with a mix of anger and fear. What have they done? He muttered. Commander, the energy readings are off the charts, an officer said. This isn't just a weapon, it's a beacon. Zaroff's eyes widened. A beacon. The humans hadn't just activated the spire, they had sent a signal. But to whom? In the cavern, Alina's team regrouped around the spire, their faces lit by its glow. What did we just do? Harris asked, his voice shaky. We sent a message, Alina said, her voice filled with determination. And now we wait to see who answers. The team stood in silence, their hearts pounding. The spire's light pulsed rhythmically, as if counting down to an unknown event. Whatever was coming, they knew one thing for certain. The fight was far from over.